Good afternoon, Whale Coin Talk community. My name is Noah. I'm here today with Lewis of the Gelato Network. Lewis, welcome to the stage. If you want to give us a quick background of yourself, your origin story, how you got into Web3 before we get started, that'd be awesome.
Hello. Hi, Noah. Thanks for inviting me on. Super happy to be here and talk a bit about gelato, crypto, everything. So I got into crypto, I think it was 2016, 2017. Pretty usual Ethereum route, like just buying some ETH, trading a little bit, and then very quickly getting very interested in the tech things more than the sort of trading things, and then very quickly started working in 2017, 18 on blockchain projects. Back then it was enterprise blockchain stuff and so on. It was a bit boring, so I was always wanted to go to the public blockchain space, and eventually just broke free and started coding and ended up building Gelato with my co-founder Hilmar in 2019. And now we're here, and we have a bunch of very cool, talented people working on the project, and we have many cool Web3 projects using our tech for over 2 years, and super happy about that.
Awesome. And so let's get started. What is Gelato Network, right? What problems are you guys solving? And give us some use cases for other protocols using your tech.
Yeah, so Gelato is a project now that's 4 years old, and of course, it has evolved. And what our original invention and mandate was smart contract automation. So we were really like the first project really doing that, starting in 2019, even before DeFi summer. Obviously, the first sort of focus was DeFi projects, and actually the first sort of big project that used Gelato's technology to automate things was InstaDebt. You probably know them. They are a super cool project. Two young guys from India who started it back then, and they have now this super cool smart contract wallet, and they have a huge TVL, and a lot of people that are using Maker, Aave, all these protocols are all using InstaDebt. And they back then, we worked with them together, and what we built was like this sort of automated debt refinancing. I think it was between some Maker vaults and Aave based on interest rates and so on. So I guess it was a bit like sort of like a mini Yearn. Yearn hadn't been built back then, and sort of was built in parallel to that. So I guess it had some parallels. And then from then on out, in general, the problem with smart contracts in general is that they cannot really be automated like on the blockchain per se. Like EVM smart contracts and so on don't support automation because everything has to fit inside one block, so things cannot run persistently. So you needed this second layer network to be built, and that's what we built with Gelato. What we build is a very generalistic protocol for automation. So really, you can build anything with it. But the sort of early use cases we saw in DeFi were these sort of more complex interest rate optimization strategies, or for example, limit orders. A very simple thing like limit orders on an AMM, like Uniswap, for example. That's not possible. The Uniswap smart contracts don't support these order types, so you need a network like Gelato to support automations like these. And there we saw great success and adoption from all the sort of Uniswap forks. For example, on Polygon QuickSwap used our limit orders, and on Phantom SpookySwap, and on BNB chain PancakeSwap. If any of you out here have used limit orders on any of these AMMs, then those were powered by Gelato and still are to this date. And then more recently, we also branched out into other things. Like we also didn't just do smart contract automation. So we pretty early on realized that in general, like what we were building was like a transaction execution engine that made sending transactions on chain very scalable. So eventually our software clients were able to handle hundreds of transactions per second, dispatching them to multiple blockchains, Polygon, Avalanche, all these blockchains, and making sure that they get mined in time and so on. That's sort of the software that we specialize in, and it turns out that it is also really useful for transaction relaying, which basically is nowadays commonly used by big sort of games and NFT mints and so on. And some of you might have had like a gasless user experience before. So big projects like Zrun, for example, pioneered this gasless transaction sending, or OpenSea even, and so on. And Lens nowadays, like everything you do on Lens, if you noticed, you just have to sign a message, or not even that. Like all of your transactions, they are basically sent without you sending it. It's a relayer doing it for you. And there, Gelato has also very specialized software, and for example, has been used by cross-chain messaging protocols like Connext. So this was like a bridging protocol, and they just released a V2 as well. Super cool stuff. And there, every transaction in their system is basically a Gelato relayed transaction. Yeah, and as of recently, we also looked a bit more into account abstraction and so on. That's basically the same like transaction relaying, but it's combining that with smart contract wallets. So it's combining that with a user on-chain identity, that basically makes it so that as a user in general, from your wallet, you don't need to have, I don't know, if you are on Polygon, you don't need to have Matic in your wallet anymore, or if you're on Ethereum, you don't need to have ETH in your wallet to pay for transactions anymore. You can simply use other tokens like USDC to pay for your transactions, or even better, application developers can choose to completely sponsor all of the gas for all of their applications users, so that the users don't even have to bother with transaction fees and Etherscan and whatnot at all anymore, and you have a user experience that's much more much closer to the great user experiences that we know from Web2. So that's also cooking. There's a bunch of other stuff, like we are a very technical project, so like most of the sort of direct users of us are like top developers from the top projects and so on. So it's quite developer oriented, and there are a lot of features I could talk about, but that it can get very technical for sure. Yeah.
Okay, wow. So lots to unpack here. And you guys started out, you said, with the smart contract automation. You kind of broke that down for us. I'm more interested in, and also I didn't know that if we're using limit orders on AMMs, we're actually utilizing the Gelato technology. I find that very fascinating. I feel like a lot of other people wouldn't know that that is something you guys proprietary, that you are, I guess, loaning out or allowing other protocols to use? How does it work?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like, it depends on the AMM, of course. Of course, the AMM has to integrate our limit order system, but quite famously, Pancake swapped it, so Quick swapped it, so Spooky swapped it. So those were the big AMMs of the last bull market, right? And yeah, if you did a limit order on this AMM, it basically went through the Gelato system, and you probably noticed because there's usually a little like sort of branding powered by Gelato sign or something on the UI. Yeah. So how does it work? Basically, the technological barrier in Web3 is that on the one hand, it's super cool, right? Like you, for the first time, have your own wallet. All of you might obviously know this because you probably at some point created a wallet with MetaMask or whatever else, right? Coinbase wallet, 1inch wallet, or what? Like maybe you even used a smart contract wallet like Safe or Argent, any of these things. So what's super cool about this is that you are self-custodying, right? Like this is the big difference to banks, to centralized exchanges like FTX and so on, Coinbase, right? Like where basically the operator of the bank, of the exchange and so on is completely in control of your identity, of your data, of your assets. Which, if it goes bad, then it can go really bad, right? Like we've seen this a lot of times with exchanges, especially most famously recently with FTX. Like literally, they can rug you, they can take all of your assets, whether criminally so or whether just by a bad luck, right? Maybe they get hacked themselves and they don't have money to repay or whatever, right? Like in any case, you are not in control; they're in control. They're basically you're loaning all of your assets and whatever you have on these exchanges to them. And of course, like a lot of times it also goes well and you never notice this, but technically technically you're not in control, right? And the cool thing about crypto is that for the first time, we've managed to build a technology with blockchains where users are in control, which is that's like the true power of it here. It's also, I believe, part of the reason why the mass adoption is so slow, because you are in control. It is super powerful, but it comes with a lot of responsibility, and at least for now, with a lot of very frictionful user experience, right? I mean, just the fact that you have to write down these 12 words when you create your MetaMask, and then there's a bunch of warnings that you have to store them safely. You cannot lose them. Don't show them to anyone. Don't keep a digital copy somewhere, otherwise you might get compromised and whatnot. Horrible, horrible UX. So with great power comes a lot of responsibility, right? Hopefully, by the way, we can build technology that preserves these principles of self-custody, of keeping control of your stuff without forcing you to have such painful user experience. Like, there's a bunch of stuff I think we can do here that makes it more seamless to the users while still not giving everything away to an intermediary, right? Like that's the goal here. And similarly with smart contract automation, the problem is that automation basically says doing something on your behalf, right? And if you're for example, with limit orders on AMMs, if you're not online to click buttons on the website to submit the order, which is normally what you have to do when you trade on Uniswap or something, right? You have to log in with your MetaMask, you have to sign and send these transactions. So how can we automate this if we don't have access to your wallet, right? Like, that's the whole point of crypto, is that you don't have to share your private keys with anyone. You don't, a Coinbase, a Kraken, and so on. Obviously, they can execute limit orders for you because they control your money. So they promise you basically tell them, hey, please sell us at X, right? And they will do it for you, and they promise to do it for you, and of course the good projects will do it for you in the correct manner and so on. Otherwise you could also sue them, but it's a trust relationship. In crypto, the whole point is that you don't give custody over your assets to someone else. So the problem with that is, how can you replicate user experiences that we know from Web2, like fully automated things, simple things like a limit order, for example? Well, it doesn't, while also not forcing you to give up custody over your funds. And that's basically what we invented at Gelato. We're basically using an off-chain network of bots, and this network of bots is there to monitor these conditions, so that when pancakes or limit orders get submitted, that the bots store them, they pick them up, and every block they check if the orders can be executed. And then when the orders can be executed, they execute them for you. They send the transaction to execute them for you. And now the crux is, in the middle, there are some smart contracts, and these smart contracts make it so that the bots, can access your funds. But the only thing they can do with them is execute the order in exactly the manner that you prescribed. So basically, the smart contract makes sure that you get exactly the tokens that you wanted to buy. So we're combining smart contracts here with an off-chain decentralized system of operators, and that's how we can have great automation in Web3 without you having to give us your keys or your wallet or your assets. So it's all non-custodial, basically. And that's thanks to the magic of smart contracts and Gelato network bots, basically, at the end of the day.
And these are important barriers of entry that need to be brought down in order for us to see mass adoption. I wanted to also note that the gasless user experiences that you guys are working on building out and spreading across the DeFi ecosystem is also a huge barrier to entry. A lot of people don't bother with crypto just because they don't want to go through the steps of getting the right gas for the right network. So you talked about how you guys are allowing or helping to allow users that might not have ETH or might not have Polygon, for example, to use USDC for gas instead. Tell us a bit more about how that works, and also tell us a bit more about how your gasless user experiences work, because I was actually able to sign up for a Lens account thanks to you guys. The whole thing was gasless on Polygon. Is it just something on the back end which makes it so that Lens is bearing the cost of the transaction fee, and because transaction fees are so low on Polygon, it doesn't really matter, it's all negligible?
Yeah, basically. So The whole gasless transaction thing essentially also just uses some smart contracts that make it so that relayers can send transactions and they can access your on-chain account or like your whatever you do, like your lens profile, your NFTs and so on. And what happens here is that instead of you sending the transaction, you give a signature saying this is what I want to do on chain, and then the smart contracts verify the signature on chain. And what the relayer simply does is the relayer collects your signature off chain and then sends a transaction on chain to the smart contracts. And there's like this middleware smart contract that verifies that what the relayer says you want to do, you actually want to do because you signed it. So, right. So that's basically the magic. But indeed, under the hood, there is, at least for on-chain applications, right, like Lens and so on, that want to store a lot of information on chain. And the whole point of it is to be on chain, I guess. There's always someone that has to pay for the gas, someone that has to do these transactions. And with Lens, it's basically the Lens project. And yeah, indeed. So I really hope that in the future these chains will become so cheap that every project can, sponsor all of the gas for the users, because it's really a really bad UX for someone who just wants to play with NFTs or social media or something to immediately force them into all these weird quirks of blockchains with you have to buy currency to pay for everything you do and so on. So that's obviously for me just a symptom of the early phase that we're in, but it shouldn't stay this way. And I think part of the reason why we haven't onboarded so many people to the space yet is simply because we haven't quite figured this part out. We're still asking people to write down 12 words, buy some crypto, and then pay for everything they do. That's that's horrible. Where else on the internet do you have to do that? Only here. So yeah, that's basically how it works. At the end of the day, you still have a wallet or something to represent your identity on chain, but you don't actually transact anymore with the chain. You just sign, and then someone else sends the transaction for you. And the coolest thing is when these applications that you use a network like Gelato to dispatch transactions in a decentralized, secure manner, and they pay for them. They sponsor them. I think that's the best UX.
By the way, is it Louis or Luis?
I've heard both, but I would personally say Louis, I guess, in English, yes. Yeah.
Okay, Louis. So, Louis, what are some plans you guys have for private key storage? Right, you just mentioned how that is a process that's not seamless. It's a bit clunky, for lack of a better term. You have to write your private keys down on a piece of paper and store it in your backyard. I don't know. What's your solution for that?
So currently we don't have any solutions ourselves in the private key management space. It's a very interesting space. There's a lot of cool new innovations happening. I think the most popular ones in recent years were multi-party computation wallets. So for example, the Coinbase wallet is one such example where very recently some very cool projects like Web3 for example, have found ways to make it so that you can use your Google account or something to generate a key and have it also be stored by a guardian or something, a share of it. This allows, while like long term, I think it's not like the fully decentralized trustless vision of crypto. At least for the first interactions with blockchains, it makes the onboarding much easier. Because now people can come and can log in with their Google identity or their Discord identity or whatever, and create like a wallet there without having to write down 12 words and so on, right? So these sort of social login solutions are currently getting quite hot. They're super interesting. We are leveraging them as well. So we have built a new software development kit that uses Web3 auth and knows the safes to give you this, what we call a gasless wallet. You should check that out. We actually, I think we give some things there to hackers at East Denver to build with it. So if any of you are attending Denver or any other hackathons, online hackathons, make sure to check out our Gelato tutorials and demos on the Gasless Wallet SDK. and that really gets you, like to a point where you can onboard your users within 10 minutes, and all they need is like a Google account or something. It's like some social login, and they immediately get a wallet, and they can immediately interact with your application without having crypto in their wallet and so on. It's all using gasless transactions and so on. That's super cool, but we don't really have an interest in becoming like a de facto wallet provider, private key management solution or so ourselves. No.
Noted. When I open the app for Gelato, it's pretty straightforward. You have a create task column, and then you have a leaderboard column. How easy it is for someone to come on and create tasks and start leveraging your technology? Do you guys have special tutorials built in, other than just documentation? Are there like YouTube videos people can watch? Would love to know more about the learning curve.
Yeah, so what you see there is just one part of the Gelato universe. It's the front end to the automation service. And there, if you're a developer and you have one like or two functions in your smart contracts that you find yourself calling manually quite a lot or writing scripts for or something, then you should definitely go and check this out. And I think we have the best product here in the space for smart contract automation. And it's really super easy. You just have to go to this UI app.gelato.network, and you can literally just put in your smart contract address, the function that you want to be automated, and then you can immediately from the UI get started submitting your first task with something simple like call this function, I don't know, once a day or every hour. And then if you want to go more complex than that, there's all sorts of stuff you can do. You can write these resolvers, we call them, where you can define arbitrary logic that defines under what conditions you want your smart contract function to be triggered. And very recently, we also launched our serverless product, Gelato Web3 functions. And if you're familiar with serverless development from the Web2 world, it's very similar to that, where you can now write like TypeScript or JavaScript off-chain scripts that pull data from APIs, events, whatnot, and then put them on chain for you. So I don't know, maybe you have some game or something, and on your server you store who the winners are every day, and you want to publish that to your smart contract. You can write a very simple Web3 function for that with Gelato, and just you don't have to then worry about running your server or something yourself. It will automatically execute the script for you and do as you please in terms of smart contract execution.
We spoke briefly about Lens protocol, and if I'm not mistaken, Lens was your first DAO experiment. Is there anything that you wanted to dive into with respect to how that's going so far?
Yeah, sure. So to be precise, it was Koru DAO. It was the project that we launched on Lens, which is a super cool project. Basically, it is a sort of community shared owned account on Lens, the social media platform. And how it works is basically you need to own one of these NFTs. And I can see some people here with an NFT actually on the Twitter space. So some Koro fans are here. Nice. And basically, as long as you own this NFT, you can access the shared Lens account and post from it. So it's basically a DAO controlled social media account, and the way to access is currently at start by holding this NFT. And I think that's a super cool social experiment. And I guess the idea is to sort of have a bunch of random people in the internet come together, curate this account, and eventually make it an account that posts interesting topics frequently. Now, of course, there's in the beginning phases, there's also a lot of shit posting and also some spam and so on. So there's a couple of problems that have to be solved still in such a sort of crazy, open, anonymous, shared social experiment. But I'm quite hopeful that it will that the spam and so on will be filtered out eventually, and then this account will become a very valuable account, and many people will follow it to get updates, memes, and whatnot. So yeah, that's the idea there, and it's also using Gelato Relay for gasless transactions, so that people can post there without having to have crypto and so on. Yeah.
We're just about at the halfway mark. Lewis, I was wondering if there's anything so far about Gelato that we haven't covered that you find important to dive into or shed light upon. I know you guys have a lot of exciting stuff coming up, so let me know.
Yeah, sure. So maybe one thing is, first of all, ETH Denver. If any of you guys listening will be at ETH Denver, you should definitely come to our booth. Yeah, I think we have a lot of things planned there for the hackathon, for the conference, a lot of side events as well. We're hosting some, we're sponsoring some. And I personally won't be there. I'm actually based in Europe, here in Switzerland, and I'm not traveling to the US this time, but probably I will come next year. But a bunch of other people from the Gelato team will be there, and they will be all very happy to meet. So don't be shy if you're going. Yeah, the folks at Gelato are super nice, and if you have any questions about Gelato, whether you're a developer or not, yeah, just approach us. And yeah, especially if you are a developer, of course, we have many cool tools and things that we would love you to try out. So yeah, that's coming up. And also, if you are a developer and you have, like, for example, you currently, I don't know, pull data from some server or something, write your own scripts around that, you should definitely check out our Web3 functions private beta. So for that, just go into our Discord, and you will find someone in there. I think there's a Discord channel just about Web3 functions, so make sure to check that out. And yeah, also the gasless wallet SDK. So if you are building a website and you want to have a really great UX, maybe you're doing NFT mints or something, and you want users to be able to just mint the NFT maybe with a credit card or something without holding any crypto, and you just want it to be sort of very quick and so on without them being burdened with all the crypto onboarding, then you should check this out as well for sure. Yeah, apart from that, I mean, Gelato itself is a DAO as well. So we have an active community. Yeah, so that's also mostly on Discord, some on Telegram. We have votes every now and then. If you're a token holder, a gel token holder, you can also participate in those, become part of the community. Yeah.
So, with respect to the setting up gasless infrastructure for a website or for a project, what goes into that? How long does it take? Is there a cost? What's the process?
Yeah, so that sort of depends on what you want to build, but I would say normally the process is, I mean, it really depends on what you want to build, but one of the decisions you have to make is where do you launch, right? And if you launch on a very cheap chain like on Gnosis, or I mean, Polygon used to be cheap, it's not really that cheap nowadays anymore, but on for example, Gnosis chain, right? There like transactions are sub-cent. Then you should really consider completely removing transaction fees for your users and just sponsoring the gas. It really unlocks a whole new user experience, and it's totally worth it. And that doesn't mean that you as a business cannot make any money and you just are a charity for transactions, right? You can still make your money elsewhere. It's just that you don't, put the burden of this horrible gas market that blockchains have on your users. So that's one decision you have to make, but you don't have to do that. You can also use gasless transactions and have your users pay for the gas still. So for example, if you're building an app where the user is somehow sending assets around, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a bridge, or maybe they're purchasing NFTs or something, then you can also use our systems to take, to have the user sign the transaction. They don't have to send it, but the smart contracts take a small fee from the money the user moves around. and pay that fee to the relayer. And this also works. Then you don't have to sponsor the gas, and it's still a gasless user experience for the user. They don't have to worry about any funds in their wallet to pay, I don't know, the Avalanche transaction fees or the Gnosis transaction fees or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, it completely depends on what you're trying to build or something.
Lewis, I didn't ask about security. How does Gelato ensure the security and reliability of its automated transactions? And what measures do you guys have in place to prevent errors or even malicious activity?
Yeah, so the whole point is to use smart contracts as much and wherever possible. So a lot of the things, for example, the whole limit order system are completely secured by the blockchain. There's like nothing anyone in the Gelato network can do to hurt the user. It's all regulated by smart contracts and they're immutable, right? And the code is law there. And yeah, I guess the only thing that could happen is that the order doesn't get executed when it should get executed, but that also doesn't make any economical sense for the Gelato node operators because they get rewarded for executing it. So they're very incentivized to execute it, unless they want to leave money on the table, which obviously they don't. So yeah, that's the one side of the thing. There are other things, so it's a bit of a spectrum. There are things where not everything can be secured by smart contracts, or it doesn't make sense because it would be too expensive. And they are basically, first of all, of course, we are building these software clients, and of course we have many processes in place to make sure that the code is as good as can be by frequently auditing it. We're working with both external auditors always, as well as having our full-time in-house auditing team. All the general software best practices, testing, and so on, reviews, all of that, of course. Those are givens, I would hope. And then what we're really excited about and what our mission was from the start is to be a decentralized project. And in reality, you cannot start decentralized, right? Like you have to get there. It's like a road. But we're certainly holding true to our mission there. We just onboarded the first sort of node operators a couple of months ago. And we're really this year going to double down on this mission to become a decentralized network, so that it's not just us running these nodes, not just us securing the network, running this logic, but also more and more other node operators. So we're building that out. We're onboarding new node operators. They all have to stake the Gelato token to be able to access the network and provide their services. And the more they stake, the more skin in the game they have, the more sort of tasks they're also allowed to do on the network to earn revenue. So it's this sort of positive flywheel effect. And yeah, so that's basically our long-term mission is to become more and more decentralized, to have less single points of failure, and to have our software be verified by more parties, eventually attested to by more parties. So that we can get pretty close to the same security standards that blockchains have themselves. Yeah, basically that's what we're committed to.
Yeah, have you guys ironed out what would be requirements to run a node as far as minimum amount of tokens, software, hardware requirements, and how would would love to learn more about that.
Yeah, so at the moment the requirements are extremely low. That's because our first client that we sort of distribute and give to node operators is written in such a manner that it performs a very simple job on the network, which is executing transactions. It's still a very cool piece of software because it executes transactions on like 18 different networks, and sometimes we see, I don't know, hundreds or so per minute, right? So doing that is pretty impressive indeed. But it's still a very sort of, compared to the other pieces of software we have, a very simple and very cheap one to run. Like you don't need any big computers for that. You don't need any expensive things. The only thing is that currently it's still a permission system, so you have to be added to the network by us, the Gelato DAO. And you also, very soon we will launch our gel staking. That's some alpha, by the way. It's not out yet, but it hopefully will be out before May of this year. And yeah, then basically you also have to stake gel to be able to join the network and run one of these nodes. And eventually, in the long term, we want to open it up completely so that everybody can join and run a node if they want to. It will all be open source. They just have to put up some stake. But for now, we're working closely together with like expert node operators and so on, because the software is still in beta, I would say. Before you like, if you really want to go full public decentralized, it's not just a breeze, right? Like it makes everything much harder. The software has to be super stable and so on. You have to maintain different versions of the software. When you roll out new versions, you have to coordinate amongst many different parties, some of which you may have never talked to and so on. So yeah, it makes everything a lot harder, and I think you should only do it once you're really ready. So I think we're getting there, but yeah, that will probably still take another year or so until it's fully open and accessible by anybody that wants to run a node permissionlessly. And then also we will add new types of nodes to the network that will be a bit more expensive to run and so on. They're doing the heavy lifting of the sort of data processing and so on, like the checking all of the limit orders every block and so on. And that can actually get quite expensive. But there we also expect node operators, but probably more on the sort of professional side of things, like probably some teams and so on that have very good blockchain connections, RPC connections, and so on. But yeah, there will be, I think, different types of node operators in the network.
Mm-hmm. So I want to know what you think about this, Louis. As far as some of the biggest challenges facing DeFi, what do you think some of those are, and where do you see, or how do you see Gelato contributing solutions to those challenges?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest, I want to say adoption is always a big one, although to be honest, sometimes people say, oh yeah, my grandma should use this or something, and I'm wondering whose grandma is currently trading in TradFi. Like I don't like, I think in general DeFi, like financial services products, are like not for mainstream users, right? Like it's not like the mainstream users on Web2 are all just degen trading on Goldman Sachs or something, right? Like so I think DeFi was like super cool already. I guess still some adoption there couldn't hurt. I think if I remember correctly from the last bull market, like sometimes you would literally pay thousands of dollars on Ethereum for transactions and so on, and the next bull run this should be gone, right? Like the DeFi should be on rollups and so on, where it's super cheap. And then I suppose one other battle that's currently obviously being fought is this whole regulation and overreach. I think, to be honest, one of the challenges we have in crypto is also all the scams, right? All the bad actors. And that's really hurting us a lot. That's hurting many good people a lot. So we have to deal with that ourselves. We have to educate the people a lot more. We have to raise up the good projects, the good people a lot more. Um, but yeah, that's hard. But at the same time, I also think we fighting regulators where they are trying to sort of to do too much, regulate too much, and so on. That's also an important battle. Yeah. Uh, Other than that, I think there's some interesting products and so on that probably haven't been built yet, simply because blockchains as a technology were still too slow or too expensive. There, I actually think the Solana ecosystem is really interesting, right? They have a whole different philosophy there and so on. They just care about latency and transactions throughput. So I'm not like that familiar with Solana yet, but I really like hearing that they're like focusing on other things than just decentralization. So yeah, I think that could also be something to bring in new users from traditional finance, hedge funds, and so on, high frequency traders and so on. Yeah. So that's pretty much it on the DeFi side. I think DeFi wise, we already got quite far, to be honest. We already have products today that are, I believe, strictly better than what the alternatives are in the traditional finance area. Yeah, I think what's really missing more a bit from the blockchain space is things like social media and so on, and that's finally coming now. And I'm really excited to see what else these developers that are building stuff right now will invent. Definitely, last time before the bull market, there were a lot of new inventions, and I would hope that there will be some new inventions this time around again, and I'm sure there will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On that note, Lewis, what sectors, apart from social media and DeFi, obviously you said it's come a long way, what sector or sectors of the industry excite you the most?
So yeah, I mean, to be honest, DeFi does excite me quite a lot. I think the whole idea of, you know, the internet first freeing up information and data and making it sort of globally accessible and you know, at the speed of light, that you can talk to people on the other side of the world and so on. That was amazing. And now the same happening for money and assets. That's simply mind blowing. So I think currently DeFi is in a bit of a it doesn't have quite the attention as it used to, but I think it will bounce back from that, and it, you know, I'm still using it a lot for sure. Um, but apart from that, I'm, you know, I'm a developer. I'm super interested in the tech. Sometimes that can be a bit of a slippery slope because you get super interesting, and I think that's happening a lot in the crypto space and so on. Like people, you know, there's a bunch of techies and they love the tech and so on, but there aren't any users. So it's like no one really knows whether this will be that useful for anyone or something sometimes. But there's a bunch of things that I'm super interested in. Obviously, like some zero knowledge proofs and so on. Some of the ideas there, but usually this is like on a very technical level, and I just want to figure out, okay, how does the cryptography work here under the hood? How does the math work? How does the engineering work? Like it's a great engineering feat and so on. And how can we scale like a blockchain? How can we, you know, how do rollups work? How are they secure and so on? All of this stuff is super interesting. Uh, it's just that you can get like you can fall down the rabbit hole, get super interested in the weeds of the tech, and then it's sometimes easy to lose sight of, okay, wait a second, apart from the couple of techies here and so on, is it actually useful for a broader audience and so on? And there are sometimes, unfortunately, it turns out that not all of these things get adopted. But yeah, I'm quite currently, I would say one of the things that really interests me is this whole app chain thesis. So, you know, I guess what Cosmos pioneered. I originally didn't think didn't make much sense to have that many blockchains and so on, but now like seeing what OP Stack did, the Coinbase IO2 launch that by the way Gelato also participated in as a launch partner there. That made me really excited, and I'm seeing a world now where blockchains are the new smart contracts, and where actually it does make sense for developers to, without having much skill and so on, just spin up a blockchain for an application, um, to get rid of, you know, essentially a lot of the sort of costs and so on. Of course, you also get rid of the decentralization and so on, but I think at least experimenting with this will maybe surface some cool killer apps that we hadn't thought of before, that were impossible before. Like probably, to be honest, maybe social media. I don't think that you know, social media will live on a chain like Polygon as it is now forever, because it's just too expensive and so on. So it will probably have to live on its own app chain somewhere eventually. So yeah, currently I'm quite interested in this whole, you know, building blockchains. I think I saw a funny tweet today. Someone tweeted something like, okay, there's like 69 L1s now and 420 L2s and 6.9 users or something, right? So that is also a bit true. Like there seem to be more blockchains than users now after Cosmos OP stack and everything. But I believe, to be honest, that this might also get the next 100 million users or so eventually. If one of these app chains finds something that's super usable, super cheap, and so on, then you know what, it will have been worth to build, I don't know, 2,000 blockchains, and one or two of them explode and get the 1 billion users, and then I'm fine with it, and I think we're on the right path here.
Yeah, I saw your post about Gelato making account abstraction for Base. Super exciting to see Coinbase just launching their own L2. I'm very excited when I see L2s that are helping scale Ethereum. I'm seeing more and more of these pop up every day or every week. What are your thoughts on Ethereum, and what does this mean for the future of that ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And I mean, I came into the space because of Ethereum. I was super in love with Vitalik. He was my personal Jesus in 2017 or so. And I guess people still treat him like a prophet, and he really is. But yeah, I don't like, on the one hand, you know, these rollups, they all say they're Ethereum aligned and so on. And right now they also pay Ethereum gas for their settlements. But some of it is also, I think, just strategy to align with Ethereum, to take some of the community over there and so on. I mean, certainly not for optimism. They're like, these are Ethereum guys. I know that, but other rollups maybe a bit more so. Yeah, so I'm not that sure if, you know, like it seems to me like eventually they could just swap out the Ethereum for something else, right? So I mean, when I got into the space, the idea was still like, oh, Ethereum has to scale and sharding and whatnot, and basically Ethereum will be scaling. And now we have sort of somewhat capitulated, I would say, and into this roll-up centric roadmap, which is also super cool and makes sense from a software perspective and everything. But I haven't fully come to terms with it yet. To be fair, though, I haven't fully researched it yet as well, right? Like, there might be a lot of blank spots I have that would give me the fuller picture here. But yeah, I'm you know, what's clear to me is that Ethereum, the chain itself, didn't scale, and it seems like it's not that scalable. And people are going to L2s now and L3s, and if these L2s and L3s all settle on Ethereum, then good for Ethereum and good for the L2s. But yeah, it's a very different model of scaling than what was there when I came into the space, and it's certainly moving. I would say it's moving some power away from Ethereum for the sake of scaling.
Mm-hmm. And before I'm going to ask a quick follow-up question to that, but I know that one of your team members, Zainab, hooked us up with a Gelato Twitter AMA. It's like a giveaway. It's an oat giveaway. I'm not very familiar with oat, but I pinned it to the space. And if people that are listening want to go and mint one of these, I don't know if they're POAPs or NFTs, but you have to follow 4 different steps. You have to watch a YouTube video, you have to follow the Twitter account, and then join Gelato's Discord, and I think follow Gelato Network as well. So if you want to tap up on that link and you're eligible for an oat. Do you know what an oat is? Sorry, Luis, I didn't quite catch it from Zainab.
I'm quite embarrassed, to be honest. I don't know what it is, but I see that it's using Galaxy, so I think it's probably some type of quest. But yeah, I'm not sure if Zainab is here, but no, I don't know actually.
No.
An on-chain achievement token. Yeah, an on-chain achievement token. So I think it's basically like this questing thing that has gotten quite huge recently. I haven't done it myself yet, to be honest, but yeah, definitely try it out. Like, I think you basically have to complete the quest, and then you get this type of token that sort of verifies that you did it. And who knows, maybe it will come in handy in the future.
Hey.
Right on.
Oh, sorry, it's
Hey.
Isa from the Gelato account. I'm from the Gelato marketing team. I can just briefly explain what an oat is. But yeah, it's basically a POAP where if you've joined the space, then you're eligible to claim it. So there's like a special NFT for everyone who tuned into the space. So if you just click on the link, you should be able to follow the instructions and mint it pretty easily.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for setting that up. A follow-up question for you, Louis, about isn't the whole idea of these layer twos that they're basically benefiting from Ethereum security? Ethereum serves as a security layer, a chain of proofs, and then the transactions are happening on these layer twos and these highly scalable rollups eventually.
Yeah, that's true in theory. In reality, I think all of them currently are still completely centralized. So it's not like they are like, as a user, you have the security of guarantees of Ethereum when you use them. As certainly, like they can use Ethereum to settle and store states, and that state will then live on Ethereum and will represent the state of the rollup. And Ethereum is a very secure network, and so on. That's great. But yeah, they're also paying a lot to Ethereum for that, right? But obviously, this is already a known issue, and there's this EIP 4844, I believe it is, proto-dank sharding, which will make it like much cheaper for rollups to do what they do. I think I've heard 10 to 100x cheaper. So definitely, the Ethereum core developers are also working hard to make Ethereum cheaper for the rollups and so on. So I think this is like some synergies there that could really make this work out in the long term. But yeah, I could also see roll-ups eventually once they become big enough, and they like think more like businesses saying, "Hey, we want to reduce our cost basis. Ethereum is super expensive and so on," and then suddenly they swap. I'm not sure technically. I'm pretty sure it's possible. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, they could just swap Ethereum out and say, "Look, we're settling on something else now, on our own L1 or whatever." But of course, Ethereum is great because it gives them these sort of very strong security and decentralization guarantees out of the box. But yeah, I think rollups are modular, and it does sort of mean that there aren't. I don't believe they are technically forever bound to Ethereum. They could move somewhere else if they wanted to. And that's the thing that gets me thinking sometimes a bit, like I'm just in terms of like, will we see something like this? Will there be a rollup that starts on Ethereum but then eventually just makes a business decision to migrate somewhere else or something? That, yeah, I haven't thought it through yet fully, but would be an interesting sort of thought experiment, I would say.
Certainly interesting to see what happens in the future. And with respect to Gelato's future, how do you see the network evolving over the next few years? What are some key areas of focus for the company and for you as a developer?
Yeah, so I think our key focus will be on decentralizing. We're building a bunch of cool tech. So we're building new features for developers, but really the underlying substrate, the Gelato network, we wanted to make it so that whenever you use something on Gelato, whether you deploy a script or something and you rely on the script to take data from your APIs and post it to your chain, to your smart contracts, we want you to sort of get these decentralization properties out of the box so that you don't have to worry, you know, what if Gelato shuts down business or something? Is my application just gonna stop running? You know, we want you to sleep well at night there and don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So there this year, I think at least most of my time will be spent on, okay, how can we take what we have and make the technology, transform it in such a way that it lends itself more easily to decentralization, and how will that look like? We've already done it before in some areas, but we're shipping so fast, so many features, that it's simply impossible to immediately write them all in such a way that they can be easily distributed in a decentralized network. So when we're releasing something new, usually it starts out in like a bit of a centralized manner, and we want to very quickly get it to a stage where it can be decentralized, because that's at least the core mission here still. So yeah, but also in general, we're looking into account abstraction. We're looking into how we can deliver great user experiences and so on. So I'm also really excited about this year, the whole okay, how can we make sure that the next time Web2 users come in the bull market, that they don't have to deal with all of these shitty user experiences anymore, and that they have something really great that's super fast and doesn't involve transaction fees and so on. So they are working together with the Noses Safe team with their smart contract wallets and with our Relay product. That is also a big theme for us this year. And yeah, you will hear more from us there soon. We will do a couple of collaborations with them, with the Safe team. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Lewis, look, it's been a pleasure having you on. I tried to cover all the high level topics and questions that I had in my head, and you did an excellent job answering everything. Some of the stuff went over my head. I'm not a developer, but it's been an educational broadcast for me. I hope the audience members got something out of it as well, or at least half as much as I did. If there's any final words or last thoughts that you want to leave our audience with, go ahead and do so now. But also remember, you're always welcome back on our podium to share updates or share news about other projects you're working on. I've had a relationship with members of your team in the past through the Gelato main account, and you guys are very nice and super interested in collaborating. So yeah, you guys are always welcome on our podium.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for inviting us on stage here. I really enjoyed that as well. And yeah, I mean, for everybody who was listening, thanks for listening, and make sure to if you're a developer, to check out our developer docs at docs.gelato.network. You will find a bunch of useful stuff there that will make your lives easier. And otherwise, just join our Discord and join our community. There's many interesting things. We also have many now. We produce content to help people that are new, that are non-technical, and just want to learn a bit about this stuff. We produce content there, like sort of to get you started with some of these concepts. And yeah, meet our team at East Denver. I'm personally also going to be speaking at East Dubai in March, so I'm going to be there on the ground. If any of you guys are in Dubai, feel free to chat with me at the conference. And yeah, if you want to try coding, I also only started 4 years ago or something. Don't be afraid. It's especially starting with Solidity is super easy. So don't be afraid. And yeah, hope to see you guys soon.
Beautifully put. Lewis, hope to see you soon as well. And Whale Coin Talk community, thank you for joining. You're listening to another episode of The Aquarium. That was our third AMA of today and the last one until tomorrow. Remember that everything you hear on these broadcasts is meant for educational purposes only. Nothing is financial advice. So be safe.